Hi, everyone. It's Samira. Let me know if you can hear me. Trying to make sure our sound is okay. I can't hear myself, which makes me think you can't hear me. Hi, Diana. Can you hear me, Diana? Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. As long as you can hear me, we're all good. I should be able to hear myself, but as long as you can hear me, I'm going to go with it. I trust you. And I'm going to trust. There we go. That everything is all good. Yay, we're here and we're doing it. Welcome to day one of the Trauma Informed Leadership Masterclass. I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you for your patience. We will make sure everybody gets tagged. There will be a replay, not to worry. Let's just take a moment and ground wherever you are in your day, whenever you're watching this. Some of my favorite people are on the West Coast. I know it's still early. We have people from all over. So happy that you're all here. Let's just take a moment and just ground in, just take a breath. Notice how you're feeling in your body. Nothing needs to change for you just to notice how you're feeling. Connect with your breath is the invitation. Just drop into your heart center. Come into the present moment. Know that you're safe and held, seen and loved. Let's offer gratitude for this moment, for technology, bringing us all together in beautiful ways. I offer gratitude for technological stability. Thank you for all of the streaming services working properly. I offer gratitude for you, for showing up, for being committed to this work, for being invested in your growth and evolution and wanting to serve yourself and your families and your communities and your clients well with trauma-informed care, with grounded awareness from a place of integrity and ethical practice and really heart-centered leadership. I honor you. And so with that, my intention is to be a channel for clarity, for love, for direct connection between where people are and where they want to go with ease and grace in this work. May we be well protected, well guided, and held always. So be it, and so it is. When it feels good, you can wiggle your fingers and your toes. You can maybe roll your neck if that feels good. And you can come back fully into this moment. I'm so happy that you're here. And we're going to jump in to day one of the Trauma Informed Leadership Masterclass. And I want to just share a moment um, about why we're here. There's lots of talk about trauma informed care, and I love it. It is so important that we have these conversations because the reality is the more that we talk about it, the more that we learn, the more that we are um, empowered around upgrading our skill sets and our knowledge bases, and the reality that in order for us to really go where we want to go as a society, um, in the coaching industry, really just as people, it's so important for us to really um, think about trauma informed care, not as an optional thing, but really as something that we don't necessarily have the privilege of making it like just this fun thing that we get to do, though it can be a fun thing that we get to do, right? It's really a responsibility. And when we see it as that, I think that we can really begin to drop in easier ways, um, and in more inclusive ways. So we're going to talk a bit about that today. Let me just get my PowerPoint up and streaming. Hopefully it does that easily. Hang on. With so many screens open. All right, perfect. So the Center for Wholeness presents Trauma Informed Leadership Masterclass Series. And the center that I have created and founded and love so much is really based on where leaders can go to embody safe trauma practice. And we're going to break down what that means, right? And so, who am I? I'm Samira. I'm an integrative psychotherapist. I'm the founder of the Center for Wholeness, where mental health and wellness professionals and leaders go to learn how to really embody safe trauma practice. And so when we think about safe trauma practice, we're talking about how do we show up in whatever work we're doing, and we come to it through the lens of trauma informed practice, right? And so we're going to break that down a bit. When we think about what trauma informed practice is, and so I'll just go back quickly for those of you who maybe are new to my world and who don't know necessarily about my history or why I do this work, we can chat for just a bit about that. So many people that come into this work really are dedicated to up-leveling in some way, personally or professionally, right? They really desire to live a more healed, whole, integrated life. And that is so important. And it's so necessary more now than ever before. We have so much stress, so much chronic stress, so much just awakening that's happening for so many of us. We no longer really have a choice to like continue to bury and suppress what's coming up for us as individuals, as a collective. We're really being negatively impacted by what we refuse to face. And so I really believe that I became a therapist to heal myself. And in that journey, I really discovered that I had quite the gift in supporting other people to heal and to grow and to really heal the past and create their lives in a conscious way from a place of wholeness rather than their woundedness. And we often are programmed to create from a place of woundedness um, until we learn a different way. And so we've been talking about in the 30-day Safe Trauma Practice Masterclass series. What is the root word to heal? It's wholeness. And so much of the work that I've done over the past 12, 13 years has been around supporting people, right? Mostly women, to return to that place of wholeness within themselves. We all have it. We all have it. And I love and honor the self-help and personal development industry. It is life-changing, right? So is therapy. I'm a big fan of therapy. I am a therapist. I have a therapist. I recommend therapists all day long. Therapy is powerful, and so is coaching. And what is important is when we understand the responsibility and having access to helping someone change their life, there comes responsibility with that. And so when we think about the different ways to support people, there is coaching and there is therapy. And for some of us, there can become this real sweet spot of learning how to apply a trauma-informed framework to support people in their healing journey. And we're going to go deeper into this during our masterclass this week, the differences between coaching and therapy, because it is important. When we think about the Center for Mental Health and Substance Abuse, there's like a body of work, right? That's SAMHSA. They really define trauma-informed care as this, and we're going to unpack it. Realizing the prevalence of trauma is so important to the work that we're doing, whether it's coaching, whether it's therapy, whatever transformation work we're doing with ourselves or with other people, including our families, our friends, our communities, especially for wellness and mental health professionals. We have to understand that most all people are impacted by trauma in some way. And some people have significant traumas. Some people have more subtle traumas that have been compounded over time and never quite processed. But when someone goes into a school or a doctor's office or a coaching program or a relationship or a new job, right? All that they have experienced comes with them. And so we don't get to put our trauma in like the fancy little storage places, right? The life storage places, and just keep that packed away while we go off and create these beautiful, shiny lives for ourselves. That's not how it works. It comes with us, whether we like it or not. And so when we're able to look at that, and when we're able to say, okay, if this is what's happening, whether we like it or not, there goes my sound. If this is what's happening, how do we support people through it? How do we become responsible enough to realize that trauma impacts all people and then figure out ways to support them? And so when we recognize that trauma affects all people, right, in all areas of life and within organizations, within systems, right, trauma plays a huge part. And when we realize those two tenets, we get to decide if we're going to take that knowledge and then put it into practice. What does that mean? If we know that everyone is impacted by trauma, and if we know that it impacts all areas of our life, when we are supporting people in transformation work, we need to take responsibility to say, okay, am I trauma informed, right? If I'm not, how do I get trauma informed? And it's not just about getting trauma informed, it's about living it. It's about it becoming a lifestyle for you. So much of the work that I've done has been on myself, healing my own self and healing my own journey, healing my own experience. And out of that, I was then able to support people in doing the same. And so that's what led me on a deeper trauma journey for myself, of recovery, is when I began to work with people post-graduate school who had addiction issues. Most of them were women. I tell the story in the program. I will give you the brief synopsis here. I was in a total like tailspin in my life. Things were wild, so much stress. I didn't even realize that I had complex PTSD at the time. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what. I was pushing through. It took me forever to finish my undergrad program because I had ADHD and didn't know it, right? And so it was always hard for me, but I kept pushing. It took me like, I think 10 years to finish my undergrad degree because of all of these challenges with emotional health and physical health. And what I learned was trauma, right? It was impacting my nervous system and my immune system. I kept getting sick. I kept needing to have surgeries. I kept having all of these endocrine autoimmune issues. But I was really determined to finish my degree because it meant a lot to my grandmother, um, who I didn't learn until after her death that she only finished the third grade. And I worshiped her. She had to quit school because things were very different back then. And she had to help her parents and her family um, on their little farm, right? And this was in Kentucky. And so there was lots of just like adversity that she faced. And what she wanted for me was to complete my education. Like that was her dream. And so when I was on this process of like trying to finish my degree, it was very challenging. I wanted to give up. There were times where I did, like I took breaks, I was working full time, sometimes like two jobs. It was really hard. And things just kept happening. And so what I realized was that I had to really find out why I wanted what I wanted so much, enough to not give up and enough to keep going, even when it got really hard. I had no idea what I know now about trauma informed care, but I knew that I had a very strong faith and I received so much generosity from professors and from staff who really believed in me, who really saw my gift and my passion for wanting to support other people. And they were so amazingly supportive. And that leads us into an important conversation around we do have a responsibility as professionals to really we're doing this work and who it impacts, and that people are more than just like a fee. They're more than just like tuition. They're more than just a sale. They're more than just someone to meet a quota or to meet your sales revenue or to meet whatever goal that you have, right? Like when we co-create with, I believe, God, the universe, we're taking on this mandate of supporting people on their journey, knowing that we will also be supported. And so when we take that responsibility seriously, we commit to a trauma-informed practice in our life and in our work. When we think about trauma-informed leadership, we're really talking about the responsibility to become a trauma-informed professional. Um, we take on the responsibility of getting that training, of embodying that work, of realizing what we don't know, of figuring out how we can most be supportive. If we need help and training to really do that well, right? It's also accepting that we need to heal our own experience. And so this is what led me to the deeper work. I was in this postgraduate experience. These were amazing human beings. I so wanted to support them. And of course, because life is the real coach and because life is the real teacher, I kept attracting people who were mirrors for me, right? They were mirrors for me in the sense that I'm not seeing comments. So if you're dropping comments, I think it's on delay. Um, I kept seeing people who mirrored so much of what I had gone through in my personal life, and they had mirrored so much of what had the dynamics that had gone on in my um family's life. And so both of my parents had addiction issues. I kept attracting people who were parents with addiction issues who really desperately wanted to improve their relationships with their children and with life, who wanted to turn their life around. And I was desperate to help them. And so I went over and above so much of what we get in graduate school for any kind of like clinical work. There's a real overview of trauma. 13 years ago, it wasn't as in depth as it is now. And even now, you have to really specialize to get that deeper training. And so much of it is your own independent study, your own out of pocket trainings that you're purchasing, that you're putting the work in, even after you've committed to this degree, even after you've done all of that work, thousands of hours of clinical work. There's more if you want to specialize in trauma, which is what I did because of my personality, because of my human design and Enneagram, all of these things. I desire to be really good at whatever I'm doing. And so I quickly realized that the work that happened when we heal trauma is holy work. And if these people were willing and courageous enough and vulnerable enough to come to the center and to, work with me, um, some of these people were old enough to be my parents, my grandparents, right? And I wasn't 18, I was older still. Even in that, they had so much respect for the work. They had so much respect for me being willing to really listen to them. I realized one of the tenets of trauma informed leadership is really being willing to be curious versus judgmental versus blaming versus really being rooted in our own ego. Well, like blaming, you should have made different choices. Why are you making these choices? You see the consequences are terrible. Just do better. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, right? It's bullshit. And so when we think about how to help people in a holistic way, it's really getting curious about, okay, you have this um challenge that you don't like, that you see is causing you all sorts of problems, right? I would sit with these men and women, these humans who desperately wanted to turn their lives around and they were unsure how. And what I quickly found out was that they knew everything there was about recovery. They could teach the recovery groups themselves, like they were master teachers. And what was mind boggling to me was if they know everything. Hi, Luana. If they know everything, hi, Jennifer. Hi, Diana. If they know everything that there is to know about recovery groups and how to actually stay sober, right? To abstain from a drink or a drug, a sex addiction, a gambling addiction, if they know how to do it, why aren't they doing it? So I got really curious and I began to realize I would never read people's charts like before I met with them, like maybe just like the cover sheet. Um, you know, the basic information. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to tap into their energy, see why they were coming to treatment, what they really wanted to get out of it. And then I would go back and look at the chart and see what had been going on. What I began to find was many of these individuals had never really discussed what led them to addiction. Many of them had discussed like the circumstantial evidence around, this happened and then I just took a wrong turn and things went left. And so I thought there has to be something else going on here. Like what happened? What happened? We're not born a disaster. We're not born broken. We're not born even monsters, right? Something happens. And so when I began to get curious about like who are you? What's going on? Where did things just begin to go awry for you? Diana, I see you. Sometimes knowing all that information can really be jaded. And I have a very similar approach in coaching. You want to get to know someone's heart and you want to get to know why they're invested in creating transformation for themselves. And then you can put on like your investigator hat and really create a plan, right? So I so hear you on that. When I began to get curious about what was happening with them as people, all of a sudden, it's like this dam broke and they began to talk about trauma. And I realized how under-equipped I was to really help people wade through the swamps of their trauma. But what I did understand was that in all things, there is a connection. I feel that links back to mind, body, spirit connection. I believe there's a trifecta there. And so when I began to go deeper in studying, I would spend hours. At night reading all sorts of books about healing and spirituality and emotional intelligence and Buddhist practice and like different cultures and their take on spiritual awakening, on what mental illness really is, on what addiction really is, right? And so I believe that addiction is largely the symptom of trauma, the symptom of trauma. Our bodies, our minds, our psyches are so sophisticated that it wants to create a way for us to cope with whatever we're experiencing. And sometimes when we are children, we create ways to cope, whether it's shutting down or spinning out of control, taking all of the energy, out of the room, whatever our way of coping is, it's to protect us. And as we get older, sometimes those coping skills can really turn into destructive coping skills. It isn't that a person is bad or is just hell bent on destroying their lives, even though it can look like that. And so when I began to get curious about what happened to you, this was years before Oprah and her doctor friend wrote the book, What Happened to You. I really began to ask that question in different versions. And what that led me to was realizing I needed to go deeper in my own healing experience because I too had had childhood trauma. And I realized it, for me personally, it wasn't an integrity for me to ask people to go deeper in their own journey and experience than I had gone, because I felt like I was taking them into the ocean and I couldn't swim. And um, I'm asking them to go into the deep waters, but I'm not sure I can lead them. And so I went deeper in my own healing journey. And as a result, I was able to take them deeper in integrity and in knowing that I could help bring them out of whatever they were willing to go into, right? So much of healing is attunement, it's that connection, it's knowing that someone can support you in going into like this cave and also coming out of it safely, right? And so when we think about trauma-informed leadership, we're talking about increased awareness and consciousness, because I don't believe that time heals all things. I believe that consciousness supports our healing journey. And if time simply passes by itself, it just passes. If we don't elevate our awareness and our consciousness, we're not really able to support um, other people well, right? Without our ego coming into play, without projections, which is how things get so messy so quickly. Luana says, yes, not asking someone what to do, what you haven't, and what you haven't been willing to do. It's so important. I felt out of integrity by asking people to, for example, do exposure therapy and go back to the energy of these old traumas when I hadn't gone back to mine. And a part of me is just like this eternal realist. And I felt like I don't want to talk about my trauma history. I don't see how they would want to either with someone who wasn't sure how to support them through it. Now, on the flip side of that, I am highly intuitive. I didn't realize it then. I have a very expansive nervous system and I have a very expansive energy that can support people in moving through and unraveling their own trauma. The more that I have grown in this work and learned and really gotten validation that we don't really support people in their own healing. We act really as a coach. We support their nervous system in creating safety and attunement within themselves. And they do the work. We're just supporting the container of safety as they do that work. But I felt really responsible back then for helping people feel safe in showing up to really heal their trauma. And what I didn't realize at that point was that in order to do that deeper work, we really have to do it in an ethical way. And so, one of the reasons why I did not want to stay in a traditional mental health agency was a lot of it is red tape because we accept insurance, and some insurances want people just to go forever because it's a business, right? And like, I get that. And when you're doing traditional therapy, you can't really bring in the spiritual nature into it. And what I knew for sure about trauma is that it's very challenging to heal trauma without addressing the spiritual component just of humanity, right? And so one of the founding pioneers of trauma work is Peter Levine, psychiatrist, and he's been doing this work for over 40 years now. He's written lots of books, one being Waking the Tiger, and he has a modality called somatic experiencing, and it is powerful. And part of his work has been early on, he realized that people had symptoms of what we know now as trauma. Back then, we didn't know that. He believed that the people's symptoms were real, but there was no medical evidence that the symptoms were coming from like a medical issue. And so what he found was that in order for people to really go within their own being and their own organism and tap into that old trapped energy and release it, the people who were able to do it and to have um, an easier experience in that healing process within their own psyche were people who could tap into a spiritual nature, right? So whether that was God, whether that was a higher power of their understanding, but doing it in their own strength and their own understanding wasn't enough. And so he says that he was an atheist when he began this work 40 plus years ago. And the people who came to his office, who trusted him on their healing journey, helped him believe that there had to be a higher power because we cannot heal trauma alone without having spiritual support. And so I too believe that. And I wholeheartedly believe that when we really embrace ethical practices around what people need to heal in safe ways that ensures psychological safety, then we're able to do the work well and in good ways. That leads us to why it's so important to have conversations around trauma-informed leadership. Whatever we're doing in terms of growing our own work, in terms of healing deeper in our own recovery experience, You don't have to be, I don't know if there is such thing as 100% healed, but I know that you don't need to be 100% healed, if that is such a thing, right? To support other people in their healing process. But you do have to be willing to care for yourself and your own healing process concurrently as you're supporting other people to heal. Because people really need, I believe, transparency, authenticity, right? They need ethical practice, and they need someone who's committed to their psychological safety. And so that can be done in the coaching industry. It is being done well by a lot of people. I'm committed to helping other trauma professionals heal more deeply themselves and to support others in healing, because when we heal, right, we heal this planet more, we leave a better place to our children and our grandchildren, and we have a better experience while we're here, right? And so when we think about how do leaders heal, we heal best through connection. We heal best through feeling connected and that inner belonging that allows our system to be supported. It allows our system to drop in and have that safety and attunement. Connection also is a human need. We need it. We need it. We can't get along well without it. And so much of what's happened with this post-pandemic era that we're in is really people feeling as though we're more disconnected than ever. And so much of that negatively impacts the healing process, because when leaders are constantly pouring out, we forget to pour in to ourselves. And sometimes we're waiting for someone to pour into us, and that doesn't happen because we haven't asked what we needed. And so when we're able to really develop our own strong personal practice so that we're caring for ourselves, we're embracing that inner devotion for ourselves, we can then provide that to our clients, to our communities, to our students in greater ways, in deeper ways, and in more holistic ways. Because so much negativity can be created unintentionally. What do I mean by that? We can have so much of our own ego wrapped up in other people's results. We can have so much ego wrapped up in what we're doing that we forget why we're doing it. When someone trusts us with their transformation, when we trust ourselves with our transformation, right? It's holy work. And when we do not take it seriously, when we don't develop the discipline to do what's needed, when we do not show up for ourselves and for the work, I feel we're squandering our gift. And let me tell you, I was there for so long. And this is why I struggled so much with imposter syndrome. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. I struggled so much with feeling as though I couldn't properly support people because I wasn't far enough on my own healing journey, when in fact I was so far along, so committed, so disciplined, right? That people were coming to me to support them in their practice. But somehow, in their personal practice and in their professional practice, right? My brain couldn't accept that as enough. And I began to seek out my own trauma therapy around this. And what I found is that so much of toxic shame and really toxic trauma, right? So much of these old patterns and beliefs are created as neural pathways that need support and being unraveled, shifted, and reprogrammed. And I know there's lots of sexy talk about subconscious reprogramming and matrix work and all of these modalities that can be helpful if they're done ethically, if they're done in trauma-informed ways, and if they're done with the safety, psychological safety, emotional safety, right, of the person involved being the highest priority. And so when we talk about responsibility, when we are doing transformational work, we have the responsibility to say, I need to take care of myself so that I can show up and take care of other people. It becomes a mandate that we lead by example in how we take care of ourselves and how we lead and in how we embody what we're teaching. There's no such thing as perfection. It doesn't need to be perfect, but we need to be committed and we need to be devoted to healing ourselves so that we are not simply wounded people trying to pretend like we're okay when we're not, to convince other people, right, to pay us to help them figure something out that they are going to have to learn how to do on their own. And what they really need us for is to help them learn to do that. And so, um, yeah, inner devotion, it's so needed. When we commit to inner devotion, we then become the catalyst for other people committing to theirs simply by example. And so when we raise our consciousness, we're able to say, this work is holy work. I am a disciple of the work in terms of I'm not just disciplined for me because it sounds good and I have these big goals that I want to reach, though that's part of it and that's important. And you're totally worthy of having big, audacious goals. You can be spiritual and impactful and devoted and desire to be filthy rich. All of that is totally okay. It's needed. I believe that we're going to heal this world by getting loads of money in the hands of women who will be willing to support the parts of the world and the ways of the world that promote humanity and that promote people over profit, right? And so when we raise our consciousness, we're able to say, this is what I want to do, support other people. Okay, how do I do that well? How do I become trauma informed? And how do I actually implement it and apply it in my life, in my work, and with my clients? How do I actually unlearn the behaviors and the patterns that do not serve me, that do not serve them, and that do not need to be perpetuated? Sometimes we are calling out the same things that we, in fact, do in this industry. Sometimes we are recreating mean girl behavior that none of us liked in high school, right? And so, why, as grown women, do we need to recreate that? We don't. It's all our ego being scared, feeling the need to act out, to lash out, to compare, and to really feel safer in our smallness and our littleness versus stepping into our bigness, our boldness, our embodied, right, leadership, so that we're able to lead by example in really good ways. We're all capable of doing it, and we all have what it takes to do it. And with that, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so when it comes to inner collaboration, so often we are being asked to partner with our inner selves. Every day, we're being asked to partner with our inner selves. We're being asked to befriend the parts of us who feel scared, who feel like they're in imposter syndrome, who feel like they're never going to make this work, right? Who may even be stuck in shame. I've been there plenty of times around the fact I've spent this money, I've made this commitment, I didn't finish that program. I don't have this thing I had going on. I don't have it released yet. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this right? All of these spirals that we go down can take us off track and aren't always helpful in getting clear on what needs to be done. So what does need to be done? When we commit to the inner collaboration. It helps us more easily discern healthy outer collaborations in terms of who do we need to work with? Who do we need to support us in growing our business and growing our mission, right? Not everybody who wants to become trauma informed and go deeper with that wants to have a business. It's totally okay. You don't have to. Many people want to become trauma informed because they want to be better teachers. They want to be better parents. They want to be better therapists and coaches. They really want to be the best version of themselves in the areas of the world that they're in, tending to the people in their life, right? It's so important for all of us to become trauma-informed leaders. I have a mission that I'm on for that. I want to empower us as a society to become more trauma-informed in education, in medicine, right? Um, I think, in tech, certainly in coaching, there's a way that we create re-traumatization, and there's a way that we create exploitation when we're not trauma informed, when we're not inclusive, and when we don't take personal responsibility at how we show up and how we are responsible for the energy that we bring, right? Some of the challenges that we have in our world, in the coaching industry, in the therapy world, right? In the helping professions, they didn't start overnight, right? And they're not going to be repaired overnight. But if we each do our part, we're able to raise the collective consciousness, right? Monks and yogis, spiritual teachers really believe that if we all gathered around a central intention of elevating our consciousness through meditation, through a spiritual practice, we could heal so much of the hate and oppression and things that cause trauma in one generation if we could come together around that synergy of devoting ourselves to the greater good through our everyday practices, our everyday routines, the way that we live, the way that we love, the way that we parent, the way that we show up in the world, sharing our gifts. So many people need our gifts. And so I posted a message in a group. I'm going to get it over on my personal page very soon. One moment, I'm sorry. And it talks about, I'm going to post a video. Many of you may have heard about this young woman who was on, was she on? She was on, what's that show? I think America's Got Talent, right? And so she was on there. She competed. Her name was Nightbirde, I believe that's what this is. Her real name is Jane. And she has this quote. I'm going to find it. So Jane was this amazing human being. And I wish I had been friends with her. So totally amazing. And she was diagnosed with cancer in her late 20s or maybe mid 20s, actually. She fought so much. She had multiple reoccurrences. She treated, she had, Luana, yes, she had times of remission. She had a loving family, right? Relationships. She kept fighting and she loved music. And she'd been playing around with the music idea for a while, I think even before she got sick. And she wanted to give it up when she got sick, clearly. She had a lot on her plate with her treatments and her wellness and trying to recover. But instead, she decided to keep going for it. She kept writing, she kept sharing, she kept showing up on social, and she enrolled for this America's Got Talent thing. She did it. She went on there, she performed. And one of the quotes that she said that's so profound is that you can't wait for life not to be hard anymore before you decide to be happy. I think this is so important. It's so important for so many reasons. Um, we're always waiting for something, things that may never happen if we don't create them, if we don't make them happen. And so what I would add, right? The um just the believer in people's capacity for resilience, for um reckoning, for reclamation. I would add this. You can't you can't wait for life not to be hard anymore before you decide to show up and try, knowing full well it might not work, but what if it leads to the thing that does? What if it leads to the realization of why you decided to come to Earth in the first place? What if it turns out better than we could have ever imagined? We won't get out of this life alone. But what if that's the point? What if we come here to come alive while we're here and have the courage to do the thing we came here to do and to be the people we were born to become, right? I believe that's possible for all of us. And I see you, Diana, on the tailspins. Jennifer, she was amazing. I see that on the spirals. When we decide that life can be hard, so hard sometimes, and we're going to keep showing up anyway, even if it's imperfect. And here's sometimes, I think, one of the greatest gifts that Jane may have given all of us is that she was so committed to sharing her journey, her passion for music, and her desire to share her gift with the world each day that she could, to try and inspire someone else to share that gift. And so when there's a there's a poem that she has, and I'll share it on all the pages. She talks about we find God on the bathroom floor, and that she really found a relationship with God in her journey, in her illness, through her cancer journey. It's what helped her come alive, even though a part of her knew she was dying. She decided to commit to how she wanted to live while she was here, still living. And she went full out, right, in sharing her gifts and her music. I am convinced that her poem about we find God on the bathroom floor is going to save hundreds of millions of lives, right? Because sometimes when we're in our addiction, when we're in our trauma, when we're in our broken relationships, when we're in our rock bottom, we think that no one's there, that no one cares, that maybe we even got ourselves in this mess and we're never going to be able to turn it around. All lies, like not true. Maybe we did contribute to what's happening, but we're all human and we all make mistakes. And the trick is to learn from them and to move forward. And so her words are so profound and they're so crystal clear on what we're talking about here today. She led herself through what was clearly one of the hardest journeys anyone can go through, being so young with so much life ahead of you, knowing you're probably going to transition sooner than later. When we decide how we're going to live while we're here, because tomorrow's not promised, we find the courage to deal with whatever's holding us back. And sometimes it's ugly, right? Everything is energy. Trauma is energy. Betrayal is energy. Mental health challenges, it's energy. Physical health things are energy. When I say that because we have to decide how we're going to move through it, how we're going to show up, if we're going to get the support that we need. Because here's the thing, for a long time, I tried to say I can figure it out on my own. It wasn't working. I did do a lot of figuring out like I did. But I also spent so much time and money and energy like a hamster on a treadmill trying to figure it out, as opposed to realizing that there were programs that were comprehensive that could take me to where I wanted to go because they were doing what I wanted to be doing. And this is the truth, not just in business, it's in personal healing as well. I am, as I said, a therapist. And when I realized years ago that I needed to go deeper on my own healing to be able to help other people to heal, I realized I did not want to spend 20 years in therapy. And here's the thing, talking about the same trauma. I love therapy and I might be in it for the rest of my life. And I'm totally okay with that. I will have a coach forever as well. Totally okay with that. But here's the truth. I wanted to be in therapy as a support to my nervous system, not to talk about the same crappy things that had happened over and over again. And so I chose an intensive um, healing experience that kind of went through it quickly and could bring me out of it and then give me time to integrate it. And it was brutal. And here's why it was so important, because I realized I didn't have a lifetime to unpack my crap from the past. And I didn't have a lifetime to deal with my trauma in the sense of like it paralyzing me. I needed to find stabilization, and I was willing to do whatever it took to find that stabilization. In that was because I wanted to support my clients in the best way that I could, right? I felt very responsible for being able to be the best partner on their journey of healing that I could be, because that's what I would have needed if I had been able to go to therapy or have a coach when I was, years ago in my rock bottom. And I also wanted to commit to it for my own inner kid who I felt deserved to be free because she had gone through so much hell for so many years. If there was a path to freedom for her, I was going to do anything to obtain that for myself, right? For her, for us. And so I committed to that inner collaboration, that elevated consciousness that took time, that took tears and blood and sweat and sacrifice and like 17 gigs to create the money to pay for the programs, to do all the things, right? It took that inner connection to say, this is worth it. A way is going to be made. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to allow myself to be supported because I know that I'm here to impact other people healing based on a prayer that I prayed when I was 5 and in a really challenging childhood. I said to myself, there can't be this much pain just for no reason. If there's this much pain in life, right, in my current experience, it cannot be in vain. And there has to be a way to use this pain to support other people to heal and to move through their rock bottoms and to come out of it and touch someone else. I believe that's how we heal the planet. And so Jennifer says, the call's been perfect. I'm in tears right now. And your example of Nightbird is shaking me to the core. This is my work with cancer survivors, and it's time to get out there to help. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, I'm going to cry, Jennifer. That post has been on my heart to write about her for weeks and weeks. Whenever I sat down to do it, I start crying because I felt so touched by her, her willingness to share even when it would have been so much easier to hide, right? Like I, of course, um, haven't had cancer. I know that many of you on here have been chronic wellness warriors facing your own medical crisis. I so see you, Jennifer, and I see that when we're in our own dark night, our own crisis, it's easier to hide, right? Like I can have a bad cycle and want to just be in the bed for 3 days. I can't usually do that, but I want to. I can't imagine going through all of these treatments and all of these just really hard days from the side effects and still committing to showing up and sharing her work so that it would outlive her, right? So that we could be right here, right now. I have chills too, talking about her courage and her willingness to be vulnerable and share her triumphs and her tragedy so that we would have the courage to share it too. And that she strikes me so much because if you go into YouTube and you find her golden buzzer for AGT, America's Got Talent, if you find the songs, and I'm going to post the Gods on the Bathroom Floor poem, um, the comments under it are astounding. So many people sharing that it's blessed them so much. It's helped them, not commit suicide and not give up on their journeys and not give up on their recovery, whatever it looks like, eating disorder, addiction, mental health. You see that her courage to show up and share, even while she was going through a shattering period, has been life-changing for people that she'll never meet. And here's the thing, here's why I'm on this point. That's the same truth for you and for your work, no matter how small you think your work is, or your business or your mission, right? There are people connected to it that are only going to really heal if they come into contact with you, your work, and your mission. Iyanla teaches this, right? I've worked with her in different ways over the years. She's a phenomenal spiritual teacher and lover of humanity, right? And she says, there's nothing new under the sun, and that's true. But she says, every person who is called to do this work in any capacity, you have souls assigned to you that are only going to hear the work from you. They're not going to hear it from me, and they're not going to hear it from their sister. They're not going to hear it from their neighbor or the cashier at the grocery store, right? They're only going to hear it from you. And if you refuse to do it, if we stay stuck in our fear and we stay stuck in our littleness, if we stay stuck in our afraid I'm going to get it wrong, or I'm going to be too much, or I'm not going to be enough, if we stay stuck in all of these ego defenses, there are people who are literally, dying, taking their life, destroying their lives, unraveling their lives in not like an empowered way, in a destructive way. And they simply need someone who can say, I've been there too. You can get through this. I'm here. I have work that can support you, right? We make it so complicated. I've made it complicated for years. I've been right there with you. Trust me, I'm not on a mountaintop in terms of something drastically has changed. It's simply that I've committed to this. It might not work out. It might not. But what if it does? And what if it working or not working really isn't the point? What if the point really is just to share our great work with the world and allow spirit to do with it whatever we came here to accomplish, right? In this lifetime, in this soul contract, what if that's the point? We don't have to manifest the dream. We don't have to create the how. All we're responsible for is committing and being disciplined to the process every single day of showing up how best we can in whatever capacity we're feeling called to, in whatever season of life or work that you're in, right? Not everybody even wants an Oprah-sized empire. You don't need to have that. But I do believe that people know when they're called to do something in the world. And if it won't go away, and I know many of you on here are called, each of you on here, I know, are called. The ones who are watching on the replay, if you're in my world, I know that you're called to do something important that positively impacts humanity. So many of our ancestors and the people that came before us, they were committed to um, change. They were committed to evolution. They were committed to justice. They were committed to helping us, right? Their grandchildren, their great grandchildren, their great great grandchildren with whom they would never meet in the physical world. And they fought for things that they would not have access to. So many of our grandmothers fought for rights, right? That they didn't even have access to at the time, but they did it for us. And I feel like very much that many of us, right, are being called to pick up that torch and continue on in whatever way we're being called to do that, right? Because there are other generations that are coming that are waiting on us to show up and to fight and to let our voices be heard and to share of the work that's in our soul, right? That's ancient, that's wanting to come through. So much, again, I love the self-development, personal development industry, and I also love therapy. One of the ways that we can get it wrong in each of those is in the self-help world, we tend to think that we need to fix every belief, every hiccup, every idiosyncrasy before we can get going. We need to figure out every aspect of business before we can get going and show up and do the work. Not true. Full transparency. Tech issues when we first started, had to restart. My phone wouldn't even open the app, so I couldn't even post that I was running behind, right? Just about to freak out when it all comes back up. 2 or 3 of my PowerPoints did not save. And I just began to laugh and say, you know what? It doesn't matter because there's a message on my heart. I'm going to go on there, I'm going to deliver it, and I'll post the slides, I'll redo them, and I'll post them after, no big deal. When a year ago, right, I would have fallen apart, I would have canceled the whole thing, I would have crawled into a shame spiral. I should have done this, I should have done that. Why didn't I do that? And that's my point. When you allow the work that you're doing every day, as consistent as you can, become your practice, the work will work you, it will grow you, and it will give you the courage to show up for the people you're meant to show up for. And clearly, those of you who are on live and those of you who will watch the replay in the next coming days clearly needed to be here and hear this message for no other reason than to commit, to go deeper to the work you're being called to do, to stop hiding behind all of our excuses. I don't know enough. I can't figure this out. I'm not good at tech, right? We'll figure all of that stuff out. We'll figure it out together. We'll figure it out in the program. There's Google, there's YouTube. You're okay. Luana says, I love that. Allow the work to become your practice through your diligence of showing up. It's the truth. And when you do that, you create these beautiful, like, ditches to hold the abundance that will lift you, that will carry you through all of it. The words will come, what you're supposed to do next will come, the program will download, you'll know what you need to do, when you need to do it, you'll have the courage to say the thing, to post the thing, to offer the way to work with you. You will just know, you will be guided if you trust it. I'm called to a higher purpose. Diana, you are. You haven't been through what you've been through to keep it all to yourself. And you haven't been through all you've been through to not share that wisdom of how you've overcome, of how you've figured it out, of how you've healed it with other women maybe going through that same storm, that same season, and they're feeling like this is never going to get better. I might as well just quit. I might as well not even try because I can't even do it. Sometimes we only need one other person to say, if I did it as lonely and lost and confused and overwhelmed with not enough of anything. If I could do it, you can do it. Sometimes we just need one person that we can relate to say that and then believe it, for us to believe it. It's so true. When I was a kid, I didn't even read any of Maya Angelou's books. I knew about her because Oprah, thank God for Oprah, all of our fairy godmother, right? And so I saw her on there one day and she was talking about her history with sexual abuse and how she shut down, right? How her nervous system shut down. We'll be talking about that tomorrow, nervous system and regulation, and how it relates to our emotional mastery. And so when her system shut down, she stopped talking. And she said what was so profound that stays with me until this day and blesses so many generations, right? That will come after her, is that so much of her silencing her own voice was how she tried to turn off her own power because she felt like her own power is what caused the trauma to happen in the first place. And that wasn't true. But as a child, it's what she thought. It's what any child would think when something so horrific happens, right, to a child. And so, what she said was when she realized it wasn't fair to herself that had survived this trauma to silence her own power and her own voice, because maybe there was someone else out there who either had faced the same thing or who would face the same thing. And if they heard her voice, maybe it would inspire them not to give up, not to take their life, not to stop living, right? Not to let the darkness win. And when I heard that on that Oprah show, it changed my life forever. And I was a kid, right? But what I realized was that there was someone else in the world who had experienced this awful pain. It wasn't just me. And she was still alive, right? She had grown up, she had became an adult, and she clearly hadn't lost her mind, right? And so I thought maybe the same is true for me. Like maybe it's possible that I will get through this. I won't lose my mind, though it feels like I am. Maybe I won't, maybe. And maybe I could use my voice too, to maybe help somebody else. Because the truth is, there are certain wounds that have been around since the beginning of time, and they're not going anywhere. But we have a responsibility of healing our own life so that we can support others in knowing what's possible. And returning to our own wholeness, which is the root word for heal, doesn't mean perfection. And it doesn't mean that we're going to return to a state where certain things didn't happen. They have happened, right? When a war veteran comes home from the war, he or she or they are out of the actual physical war, right? In the tangible place where it happened, but inside them, the war still exists. And so much of recovery from PTSD, from complex PTSD, from these neurological imbalances, from these misunderstandings that we have internally between our unconscious and our subconscious, and our conscious mind. So much of that simply needs to be unraveled. And we will go through different ways to do that. In the program, this cohort, I think that it's important for us to know that there are tools, there are practices, and there are perspectives, right, in healing so that it doesn't take 20 years, so that we can move through our own insecurity, our own self-doubt, our own self-sabotage, the ways that we hold our own self back from doing the work that we came here to do. We're all meant to do special work in the world. If you're in my world, I know that you are, and I'm here to support you in doing that. I have loved being with you today. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to know what you're taking away from today. What's landing for you? What do you feel inspired to really embrace? What's your aligned action step? If you could do one thing to really ground this conversation that we've had today, what would that one thing be that you're going to do in the next 24 hours to really ground this in, to really signal to the universe, I'm here, I'm ready to do what I know I need to do, even if I'm still scared, even if I'm a bit overwhelmed and unsure, I'm going to bring it with me like a beautiful pouch in my purse or my backpack. I'm going to throw it in there. It can come, but I'm going to move ahead. I'm going to take a step. What would your aligned action step be? I'd love to hear it. I love your declaration, Jennifer. Diana, thank you for being here. You are gonna believe it. I can feel it. You are called to a higher purpose. I'm glad that you know that and can recognize that. And I am certainly so grateful that you all were here today. I'm so grateful that you've taken good value away from this conversation today. Luana, I love that. Allow the work to become your practice through your diligence and showing up. It's so true. We have power over our attitude and our effort. And so many times we when we are healing trauma or when we are grounding into a new way of being, we don't always realize that sometimes what we are being called to do is simply one next right step. It's not needing to have the entire stairwell there. It's one next right step. That's it. When we're able to lean more into that, so much of the overwhelm, so much of the, I don't know, this is so hard, so much of all of that can go away because we can just trust. We can lean in more to trust. There may be a slight delay, so I will hang on for a few more minutes. If you have questions, I'd love to know what you're taking away from today. I will drop the link to our private Facebook group. If you want to go deeper around any of these conversations, we can do so in that group. It's a free group. I'd love to have you there. Luana says, I'm going to journal on this, plan out my week for promoting my coaching program. That is beautiful. I love it. It's so necessary. Yeah. What is my next right step? I would journal on that question. That would be the question. Is tomorrow's session? Tomorrow's session is 2:30. Tomorrow's 2:30 Eastern and Wednesday is 11 a.m. Eastern. Yeah. And there may be a bonus day. I'm going to figure that out today and post it. But tomorrow's 2:30 Eastern and Wednesday is 11 a.m. I will drop that in the chat. We'll get it dropped in there. Diana, hi Lakia. What are you taking away, Diana? Jennifer, taking away that I'm on my own way, that I'm in my own way. I'm also going to journal to help me soak this all in. That's beautiful. And the thing is, I've been there so many times for half the year, this year too, Jennifer, in my own way. And here's the truth. It's one of the easier things to resolve. If we're in our own way, we can lovingly get out of our own way. That's the real power in that. If we're in our own way, we can lovingly move out of our own way. We have the power to create that shift with love and compassion. Because here's the thing, the part of you who's blocking you, who's scared, she's just scared and doesn't want you to be hurt, doesn't want you to be hurt or embarrassed. She doesn't want you to feel like you're messing up at all. She doesn't want you to ever feel like you may have in the past when something didn't work out the way you wanted it to. So she's trying to protect you. But here's the thing, you're feeling discomfort and pain by not having and being where you want to be. So, though she's trying so lovingly and so bravely to protect you, she may actually be the one who needs your protection. She may need to be able to go be a kid while you take over this part of your life as the adult now. She may not even be aware that you're all grown up and can take care of her now, and you can make the decisions that are best for you and that will keep her safe. The parts of our psyche that are young, and we're going to go into this more tomorrow in emotional mastery, the protector parts that want to keep us young, that want to keep us safe, they are very young and their intentions are good. Their approaches are very elementary because they're so young. And so, like a little kid who thinks, if I don't put my shoes on, we can't go to school, and then I won't go to school, and that'll be it, right? They have a good intention. I just want to stay home. But when they put up all of these roadblocks, it makes everything more complicated. Now the parent or caregiver is running late. Now they're frustrated. Now they're fussing, right? The kid doesn't think that there's consequences for embracing the resistance and just sticking its feet in the sand versus how can I get creative and move myself through this with love. Deanne, I love that. We lovingly can get out of our own way. And I will say it can be much easier to get out of our own way when we think about, right? People like Nightbird, right? Like Dr. Maya Angelou, who really were able to move past their own trauma and shame and insecurity. And I don't feel like it. I'm scared. This is too much. And focus on the one person, right? Today, it's been us, the people who would find that work and say, if they can do it, if she can do it with all that she faced, I can do it too. What's simply my next right step? And I can trust that more will be revealed when I need to know it, not before, not after. When I need to know more, more will be revealed. I can focus on my next right step, which might be, like Deanne said, lovingly getting out of my own way. What would be one step to lovingly get out of my own way? For some of you, it was showing up here, coming back tomorrow, 2:30 Eastern, same place. For some of you, it's going to be taking action on the thing that you know you need to do. Like Luana, I'm going to create a plan to promote my program. Maybe it's one action step per day focused on that program. For Diana, maybe it's deciding what your response is going to be when that tailspin comes up. Maybe it's saying, I hear you, I've got you, you're scared, I understand that. And this is what we're focusing on for the next 15 minutes. I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to get it done. However it turns out is how it turns out, right? For Jennifer, maybe it's really setting a timer, getting that journal out, writing down what is my next right step, and letting that stream of consciousness just come, and then decide based on what comes out on the paper, what is the action step that I'm going to take, even if I'm scared, even if there's tears in my eyes, Who can I text and say, hey, I'm going to do this scary thing. Can you pray with me? Can you just sit with me for a moment while I harness my courage? I'm going to go do the thing, whatever it is, right? We can be our own best ally. And for us, for many of us, when we have that support of somebody else to say, hey, I'm with you, I've got you, you're okay. That's all that we need, right? That's all that we need. And so you all are amazing human beings. Thank you for being here. If you're on the replay, please, please, please drop in. What are you taking away? What's your next right step so I can support you and celebrate you in that? Tomorrow's day 2:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on my personal page. And we will be talking about emotional mastery and how we really can use that in collaboration with nervous system regulation to move forward in our leadership, to move forward on our goals, and to really support our communities, our clients, whoever we're assigned to support, how we can do that in a trauma-informed way by really grounding into our own emotional mastery. It will also help us move through some of the blocks that we mentioned here today. Jennifer, you're so welcome. Thank you each for being here. Thank you for being here on the replay. I love you so much. I will be back tomorrow for more trauma-informed leadership. Thank you for being here. Bye for now.